Hey everybody, we're here. I've been requested to show you the power flow for the 4R70W transmission. And what I've done, I've kind of done myself a little makeshift stand here on my spring compressor. And we're going to show you how the planetary system, how we hold certain members, drive certain members, a hold one, and one's the output, and that's going to give us our various gear ratios. So on this one, I just want you to remember on the 4R70W, the ring gear here with the output shaft right here is always your output. It has no choice. That's just where it is. It goes to the drive shaft. So that's always going to be the output. What we're going to change is the inputs and the reaction or the held member. The input or the drive. This is my output or driven. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, this is my direct drum. Third clutch. It comes on with third, stays on in fourth. I'm going to put this down the bottom because this is where my planet, my carrier is going to sit on, just like that. So I have to have this down the bottom for this carrier to rotate. So I'm going to drop that in. You just got to remember, if I mention direct clutch is driving the carrier, that's why it's being that's why it's driving. That's what's moving it. So I'm going to drop the carrier in on it. That splines in with my ring gear connected to my output shaft. Okay. Now I'm going to go through first, second, third, fourth, and overdrive and show you the various members. And if you notice, the first through third gear, the first 7 steps are identical. And what we're going to do is, remember, from the torque converter, the turbine is splined to my turbine or my input shaft. That's where my input is coming from the torque converter. So this is my input shaft. This is my forward clutch inside here. Once you pull the shifter into drive, this is what engages, and that's that little bump you feel. And now we're ready to do something. When you hit the gas, the car is going to move forward. This guy right here on the back is, I mentioned it before, this is the reverse clutch hub. It's where my reverse clutches, these guys, are sitting on top of, like this. These reverse clutches in here are going to grab, whoops, sorry, I'm shaking my camera around, are going to grab this clutch hub. So to get these out of the way, here's my turbine shaft with my clutches, whatever's doing the input. So this is what I'm going to replace them with, is my hand here. We just got to remember these guys are involved. And this was, they were shown on the initial teardown, and we did the tear down and rebuild on one of the task sheets on the forward clutch drum. So first gear is, it's going to start out, the first 7 steps is the engine drives the turbine shaft. That's that input shaft. The turbine shaft drives the forward clutch. That forward clutch is applied. We've just selected it. Forward clutch will drive this forward sun gear. I'm going to put the forward sun gear, this is what the forward clutch grabs onto, and this is the forward sun gear. I put this little flag on here so we can see it going around, because in a little bit it's going to be covered by something and you can still see the input. Now, forward sun gear will drive the short pinions. Short pinions will drive the long pinions, and the long pinions will drive the ring gear. Now, once they're driving the ring gear, that is our input. That's where the torque coming in. Now we introduce our held or our fixed member, and the carrier is held by the low one-way roller clutch. That's this guy right here. But we got to have something for him to grab onto. So what I'm going to introduce, this is my center support. It has the inner race for the low one-way roller clutch. This is splined into the case so it doesn't rotate. It's going to let that clutch bite onto it. So basically I'm just going to put him right in here, and I'm going to be the case with this hand right here. And here is my input. Here's my forward sun gear. We'll drop this in, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to put this on next. So if you notice, I got all 3 marks lined up with each other. So I'm the case. I'm going to hold this support. It's going to hold my planet. My carrier is going to be held by the low one-way roller clutch in there. This is my output. Here's my input. Okay, so it says the carrier is held by the drive low one-way roller clutch. So engine drives the turbine shaft drives the forward clutch is applied, forward clutch drives the forward sun gear drives the short pinions drive the long pinions drive the ring gear, the carrier is held by the low one-way roller clutch, and the ring gear drives the output shaft. So what I want you to see on our ratios, remember the ratio is always a number like a 1 to 1 or 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. This is my input. This is the first number. This is the second number. So what you're going to watch, this is going to stay still. This is my reaction member, my held member. This is my output. And so the output is what I'm concerned with. We got to see when this comes around, one full revolution back to the start, and I'll keep track. And you may be able to do a split. I'm going to do it real slow. I want you to see what my input does, how many revolutions it does. So I'm going to hold this, and here we go. So this is it. This is the engine rotating. Of course, it's doing it a lot faster. So my input has come around for one revolution. There's one. Two full revolutions on the input so far. And here comes my output. And when the output completes the revolution, I stop. My input almost came around for another third complete revolution. If I divide this into 100 parts, basically that's what we do, I have about a 2.9. It's like a 2.90 or something. I have a 2.9 to 1 first gear ratio. Okay, so you saw it. So 2.9 revolutions on the input, 1 revolution on the output, 2.9 to 1. Okay, piece of cake. Now let's go to second gear. Second gear is the engine drives a turbine shaft drives forward clutch is applied, forward clutch drives the forward sun gear, it's this little guy. Forward sun gear drives the short pinions drive the long pinions, and the long pinions drive the ring gear. There's my first 7 steps. They're identical to first gear. Now we're going to add something. Remember, that's the input. Now we're going to add the reaction. Let me pull this off right here. I'm going to get rid of this guy because the one-way clutch is it's still applied, but it's ineffective. It's not going to affect my second gear. I still got to drive my forward sun gear. So I still got this guy, okay? Now, what happens in second gear, the thing I'm going to add is my intermediate clutches. These are up top, and these are applied around. Let me get I've only got 2 hands here. Let me see here. These things weigh a ton. Okay, it's going to be applied. These are the intermediate clutches, and these are applied by the piston that was on the back of my pump, that previous lab that we covered, that video with the task sheet. When these clutches apply, these are splined into the case, so they're stationary. When they apply, they're going to grab on to this little guy right here, this ratchet. This is my intermediate clutch hub. It's got a one-way clutch. It's called a mechanical diode, and that's a whole nother video. I'll beat on this thing here later. But when it grabs this, it's going to stop this drum from rotating. This drum here is splined into my reverse sun gear with the drive shell. So it stops this reverse sun gear from rotating. So that's what I'm going to do with my hand, okay? This guy's got to drop in here on top of the forward sun gear. Remember, they rotate separately from each other. And let's see here. Let me get that lined up. I want to cheat again here. Okay. And here's my little input. Still got to have my input right here on my forward sun gear. You see I got, whoops, almost had my marks lined up, didn't I? Okay. And this one gets to turn there. Okay, so we went through the first 7 steps all the way up to the long pinions drive the ring gear. Intermediate clutch is applied. Intermediate clutch holds the reverse sun gear. This one will rotate from before, but it's ineffective, so we don't count this guy. This is the output, my ring gear. This is my input. So what I'm going to count now, We're looking at this one and this one, and I'm holding the reverse sun gear. So we start turning. Remember, the bottom mark is the one I want to count there. Okay, there's 1 revolution on the input. And here comes my output, and it's lined up, I believe. My input went just over the halfway point, so it's about a like a high 1.6, maybe 1.67, 1.7, someplace around there. So now I have a 1.7 to 1 ratio, 1.7 to 1. I did 1 complete revolution, and then almost maybe a 3/4 on the input. So 1.7 to 1 on second gear. So I went from 2.9 to 1, 1.7 to 1, shifted into second. So now you can see the engine's starting to slow down, but the wheels are increasing. You got to think about it like 2 guys running a race, and he didn't do so bad this time. The other guy lapped him almost 3. This time, the other one only lapped him a little over 1.5 laps. Okay, second gear. Now we're going to go to third gear. Same thing, first 7. Engine drives turbine shaft drives a forward clutch. Forward clutch is applied. Forward clutch drives the forward sun gear. The forward sun gear drives the short pinions. Short pinions drive the long pinions. Long pinions drive the ring gear. Now we're going to introduce something else here. What I want to do is I'm going to get rid of this guy because I don't need him anymore. Not right now, I don't need him. And I'm going to put this, put my input back on here. And let's see, let me line my marks up first. Now, the stub shaft. This is my stub shaft, and it's being driven by, it's splined into the end of the turbine shaft, so basically it's being driven by the engine. Okay, so he reaches all the way down through here, and he is connected up to my direct drum down in the very bottom, that little drum I dropped in first. So turbine shaft is running here all the way down, driving the direct clutch. So the stub shaft drives the direct clutch is applied, and now it's latched on to that spinning engine torque that's been going down the shaft here. And when it applies, remember, the planet is sitting in the middle of that direct clutch, and now direct clutch is applied, direct clutch drives the carrier. Okay, so this is an input now. Now I'm going to put my forward clutch right here, or my forward sun gear. So here's the planetary principle. Since 2 components are driving, the third component will be driven at the same speed and the same direction. So forward sun gear is an input, the carrier is an input, so the engine torque's coming from the forward clutches to the forward sun gear and down through the stub shaft into the direct drum driving the carrier. This is my output, and if I have 2 inputs, what does the output have to do? It can't do anything. The only thing it can do is go along at the same speed in the same direction. This is what I talked about on the planetaries. Planetaries can be noisy in certain gear, but when you go into direct drive, they're going to get quiet because it's all turning as one mass. 1 to 1. That's the ratio. 1:1. So 1 to 1 ratio. That's direct. That's third gear. So let's do fourth gear. Overdrive. Now, here's where it changes, those first 7 steps. Engine drives turbine shaft. We have to drive that turbine shaft, my input shaft, because if we don't, we have no movement anywhere. Nothing works. Turbine shaft drives the stub shaft. So we're still driving this little guy with the turbine shaft. He's still driving the direct down in the bottom. So I'm not using the forward sun gear. I'm going to set him aside. So I still got the turbine shaft. He's the input. Okay, the stub shaft drives direct clutch is applied down in the bottom, direct clutch drives the carrier, the big guy right here, and the overdrive band applies. Now, here's my overdrive band, and where the overdrive band applies, remember I had my intermediate clutches grabbing onto this. Well, now the overdrive band's going to grab my reverse drum. Why would I need to grab a reverse drum to get overdrive? See, so the guy that developed this is doing some really good drugs here, man. So my overdrive band grabs my reverse drum, and again we're going to stop the reverse sun gear because remember it's splined on right here to my reverse drum. So I'm going to stop this guy again. I can stop him from ringing here. Put this down. Now, I'm going to put him in. Line this up. Okay, so I'm going to, this is my reaction. This is the held part. Overdrive band applied and stops the reverse sun gear. My input is still my direct drum, and I don't need the stub shaft. I'm going to have to drive this Planet with my hand because the drum, I don't have hydraulics, so the drum's not applied. Here's my held. Here's my input. Here's my output. Remember, this is overdrive, so here we go. And there's my output. It's already completed. It's one revolution. My input right here. It's not quite 3/4 of the way. This is about a 0.70 to 1 ratio. So overdrive. Less input, less engine speed, more output speed. The engine's settled down. I'm moving down the freeway. I'm saving gas. So you see there? So 0.7 to 1 ratio in overdrive. I may be off about a hundredths, but we're okay. But you get the idea. So the Planetary was the input this time. All right, last one. Look how pretty that was. Isn't that neat? Look at that, man. Let me line these guys up. I'm going to need this one. And in reverse, it's a little different in reverse here. Some people don't like reverse when they have to learn it here, but the engine drives the input shaft, or turbine shaft. We got that. Turbine shaft drives the forward clutch drum, just the housing, not the clutches. They're in there, but we're driving this drum. Forward clutch drum drives the reverse clutch hub. This guy. So now he's been sitting here the whole time, just going around 100 miles an hour. And now, remember, my reverse clutch drum sits on top of that hub. Reverse clutch applies. These guys apply right here and grab onto that hub. It's like you standing there and a truck comes driving by and you reach out and grab it. Now you're moving, okay? So the reverse clutch applies, and now the reverse drum or the reverse clutch drives the reverse sun gear. Remember, it's splined into these lugs. Now, instead of holding it, we're driving it. We've held it for 2 gears. Now we're driving it. It's got torque applied. Okay? My camera person over here nodding yes, she understands. So you guys got to get a hold of it too. So, all right. It's my daughter. She's my gearhead. All right. Now, reverse clutch drives reverse gears. This now is my input. And this is driving the reverse clutch drives the reverse sun gear. This is driving my long pinions that are directly engaged with the ring gear. Remember, we drive the short pinions, drive the long pinions. Long pinions drive the ring gear. Now the ring gear, or the long pinions, are directly connected now. We're driving them direct. Now, what happens is right here, I'm going to get this out of the way. Last piece is the manual low reverse band applies. Finally, he gets to do something. So it goes right around there and just clamps on to that Planetary. And you can still see the input right there, or the held, the mark. I'm going to drop my input here. Let me line them up. Okay. That's it. Manual low reverse band applies. Manual low reverse band holds the carrier. The principle is when you hold the carrier, I don't know if you remember this from the last time we talked about it, you get reverse. Long pinions drive the ring gear in the opposite direction, and the ring gear drives the output shaft. So I put it in reverse, band clamps onto the Planetary, and now I'm driving my reverse sun gear, and watch your output, and they go in opposite directions. The engine doesn't change directions, the output changes direction because I'm holding the Planet. That's the principle. There's 1 revolution on the input, 2, and about a 2.4 to 1 in reverse. It's someplace between first and second gear. So you saw it. That's my reverse ratio. That is how you get reverse. If you hold the Planet, it don't matter what direction your input is, the output goes the opposite way. That's it. That's the principle. So you drive 2 components. Third component must go in the same direction. If you hold the Planet, you get reverse. If the Planet is the input, like in 4th gear, then the result is an overdrive. And the main principle is if you drive one member and hold another member, the other member is going to move. It's going to react. It's the output. One input, one held, and one output. And guys, that's it in a nutshell. All the transmissions, if they use planetaries, bands, clutches, they're all going to work like this. Ratios may be slightly different, but all we're doing is holding a planetary member, driving a planetary member, and one of them's the input, and that's what you get is your ratios. So if you understand that and you get your power flow down, man, it just opens it all up for you for diagnosis. This is for diagnosis purposes. This is for parties and stuff. No, diagnosis so you can figure